You come from photography. You've been working as a pro in photography for many years.
Mm-hmm.
You have a love for this music scene. But also you've been shooting, as far as I know, of your about your former work as a photographer. You've been shooting a lot of sort of kids culture in the streets, and
Yeah.
and how, at what point did you know that you had to do like a fiction film about this scene and not a documentary, for example?
Well, I've been shooting for the Face magazine for about maybe 5 years or something, and obviously I've been shooting a lot of documentary images as a stills photographer of different underground music cultures, and often at these events I would take a moving camera as well. I'd hire a video camera and take that along, and I felt I was kind of ready to go into moving image at a certain point. And then I started taking moving cameras and recording Northern Soul events, and feeling like I had to do a documentary about Northern Soul. And I couldn't find the kind of energy that I'd experienced as a teenager in the more early years of Northern Soul, because this was in the 90s. And there was no lack of energy when it came to looking at people who were trying to find new vinyl, trying to discover old vinyl that's never been exposed before. But the dance floor excitement wasn't there. And I had the idea after several events and looking at the footage, it's not working. The energy on the floor is gone. Everybody's old. Including myself.
We can discuss that later.
So it was like that moment where I thought, this has got to be a fictional tale, and that was the kind of moment where I thought, oh shit, who's going to write the script? Yeah.
But this, because this is your debut feature, and I know it's been long in the making, and I know that I'm sure you have a great team with you through these years, but it's also very much your baby. Can you tell us a little bit about this process of actually, producing, getting it distributed, and so forth and so forth, because it's been quite a lot of years, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's such a lot of different stages to this. I mean, there was the whole stage where I tried to get a writer to help me. That didn't work. Several writers met with me and then didn't kind of follow on. And so in the process of trying to create the information to pass on to a writer, I realised that I kind of had something there to go from, and I continued to keep presenting these kind of ideas to different writers, and some people were like, oh yeah, this sounds like a good idea, but then would never follow up with any notes or... So it was like, at some point I recognised that I'm the best person to do it, even though I'm not a writer, and I have to try and learn how to do this. So that was one phase that took kind of 10 years. But I wasn't just doing that, I was doing a lot of stills as well, and directing TV ads and pop videos, and bits of short films here and there. So... And then there was the process of finding a producer who would take it seriously. And that is really not easy at all. Because for some reason, the genre or the kind of cult subject matter was just not appealing in the UK to anyone in the film industry across the board. So producers were not interested in this. Festivals weren't interested in it, public funding bodies were not interested in a working class kind of rites of passage cult film. And so that, its subject matter, the subject matter itself was a major problem.
And did the people you approached, did they know about the scene? Is it like something?
Not really, I don't think they cared, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to say, but I think that there's a certain taste of of films in the UK that get funded, and then there's other films that don't. And I fell into the group of films that are not in the right taste bracket. And unfortunately, you know, working class people from the UK loved this film and filled the cinemas. But
when you finally got it out there, because
yeah,
you pretty much did that on your own yourself.
That's right, but
distribution.
There's a kind of certain style of working class film or working class representation in the UK that film industry love, and that is when it's all about a victim. And this film was not about victims. This film was about protagonists who define their own, you know, future responsibilities or whatever, and that unfortunately hindered the entire process. So once you don't get public funding, you don't get a shout at festivals. Distributors don't take it seriously. It's like, where's the BFI logo? Oh no, don't watch that. So yeah, it's been a real uphill battle all the way.
But when it finally made it into the cinemas, it's had a great success, high numbers, selling.
Yeah.
Many
DVDs. 98% seat occupancy. Hate those statistics. Wow. But basically, nearly all cinemas that showed it were full. And nearly all the reviews were really positive. Like, we got so many 4 and 5 star reviews, it was unbelievable. Yeah, so it was amazing at the end. And then, like, the BAFTA nomination came in and the London Film Critics thing, but before that it was just like the elephant in the room.
We're really happy to be able to give it a limited release here. It's going to screen in the Cinematheque in collaboration with the Cinematheque from Thursday next week and a week on. So you know that already. I'm just bringing that information to the people. Let's have some questions from you guys. Because I know there's a bunch of Northern Soul, hardcore Northern Soul fans in the crowd, and also some people that would DJ later from the Backstreet crowd, right? Otherwise, I'll just continue.
No, but I know like there has been some discussion at the scene if there's too many drugs in the film. Or
too many what?
Too many drugs.
Oh, drugs! Yeah.
Like, the drugs.
But like, what is your take on that?
Okay, so this particular lifestyle that we're representing here was a nocturnal alternative, yeah, to going to pubs and local clubs and getting drunk and getting off with someone that you went to school with, marrying them, having loads of kids, and then going working in a factory. And these kids were not happy with that. They wanted to do something different. They wanted to take themselves away from that culture and be the kind of masters of their own destiny, even if it's quite a frivolous kind of, you know, obsession or whatever you were, you know, lifestyle choice. They wanted to do something different, and within that they chose not to drink alcohol. There's a scene in there where he goes, "Are you drunk?" Like, filth. So the amphetamine part of that culture provided the ability to stay up all night and dance. And not everyone did that, but from my personal experience, I would say I never came across anyone who said, "I'm not taking any gear tonight." And maybe if they didn't, they certainly didn't say it because it wasn't cool. And I'm not advocating Class A drug use here, I'm just saying how it was. You know, I would go to an all-nighter and I would take 1/4 of a gram of speed, and that would keep me up all night and it wouldn't have me flying, so that it was a nice come down the next day. But some kids did it, and some kids gravitated to that scene because they loved doing speed, and they maybe, you know, had a terrible time, but it was something that everybody did, and if they didn't, then they said they did. And strangely, we now have a lot of people coming on Facebook saying, "It wasn't about the drugs." And it's weird because I know that those people are sharing their Facebook pages with their sons and daughters, and they're just lying. because some of them I know they did do amphetamine. So, you know, and if you quantify how many scenes there are where people are taking drugs, as opposed to how many scenes there are where people are dancing and talking about the records, it's, you know, it's not that high. But because you're seeing it in such a graphic way, it's really in your face. But it was a culture and it can't be ignored.
I really like the film, first of all.
Thank you.
So much. I just wanted to ask you about the relationship, the two boys, the friendship, and why you chose to have two boys.
Okay. Okay, I've spent a lifetime since being a young teenager watching men obsess over vinyl or obsess over scooters, over clothing, and I found it fascinating because it can be all encompassing, and you can, you know, talk to these guys and they don't hear you, they're tuned out because they're tuned into the vinyl. And it's amazing to see that, you know, these friendships are developed purely through the kind of obsession maybe is too strong a word, but the kind of passion for what they're following. So, for instance, the two guys in the film are so interested in that music, but not just that music, but a particular take on that music, that you know, that's what their friendship is based upon. I mean, there's a scene in the film that I cut out because the film was running too long, where it's just before they play the Marvin Gaye thing and they have the big row, and it's kind of all about how far you can go with the kind of esoteric and the rare, and how it shouldn't be about the audience dictating and things like that. And it's a good scene because it shows that obsession and that level of passion, but unfortunately it got cut out. But I decided not to do a film about two women because in that period women were not driving that scene. You know, the sort of pioneers of this scene, if you like, were the collectors who started collecting in the 60s and also travelling to America were all male. The promoters, DJs, drug dealers, anything that was driving the direction of the scene was coming from a kind of young male working class perspective. So I decided to do it about that because it would have been ridiculous to get two women and go, right, they're DJs, they're in the 70s, they're in the eye of the storm. That wasn't actually, you know, happening. So I wanted to have a kind of quintessential experience of Northern Soul from the perspective of someone who was ordinary, who had a kind of aspiration to be a somebody through that scene. Yeah.
Did you consult with guys about your I mean, it's kind of like a boys' club. You also have some really awesome female characters in your film, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's lots of women on the scene who were really into it, very passionate, followed it and went to all the all-nighters and could really dance. And, you know, me and all my friends, we were very kind of like tomboyish and we wouldn't take any shit from guys. It wasn't like it was all about the guys. Like the girls were really feisty and could hold their own. But it was really that in that period, it was more the guys pushing forward. And then generally, you know, in the UK in the 60s and 70s, working class women did not have careers. You know, they didn't. It wasn't on the horizon. There wasn't this kind of idea that there is now that you can go and do a university course and then become an architect or become, I don't know, a photographer or a filmmaker like me. Like my older sisters who were born in the 50s, both got married at 18 to get away from my mum and dad, you know, to have some independence. And they didn't have this kind of ethos that women go and, you know, carve out a career for themselves. So, you know, it might have it did happen in middle class families and culture, but it didn't in working class culture.
But that sort of urge to that you also describe the main characters in the film have to seek out, go abroad, experience something bigger. That must be something you can relate to as well.
Oh yeah,
Isn't it?
but like by the time I kind of came along, it was the 80s. My kind of teenage years were kind of through the early 80s, and our sort of industrial climate in the UK had changed. All the jobs had gone in the factories, and there wasn't that, oh right, you're going to a factory to get a job. It was like suddenly you're unemployed, and then you've got to just kind of carve out whatever it is you can. And I just was one of the lucky ones who managed to get to London and find a job as an assistant photographer.